You know, there's an old saying about rats fleeing a sinking ship. And for the second time in this week alone, major executive at Activision Blizzard has left. Now, certainly there are a lot of disappointing moves that Blizzard and Activision made this year as a fan, but investors are even more annoyed given just only making 500 million on games like Call of Duty and shrinking subscriptions on games like World of Warcraft, waning interest in Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, and no major new titles on the horizon. But let's look at who left now. The second major C-level, that's a corporate level. There aren't a lot of C-level people in these companies, but now we've got Activision loses second finance executive in bad start to year. I'd say it's the fourth. Analysts lament slow sales in some games, weak product lineup, and fans were not thrilled with Diablo preview in October. Activision Blizzard is losing another top financial executive. It's second this week. Amarita Ahuya? I don't know. Ahuya hire you, though. No, that's a bad dad joke. Wait, let me do that again. I don't know who is going to hire you. Okay, anyway. CFO, now she left to be the CFO of Square. It's interesting that both C-level employees found new jobs at gigantic companies, one at Netflix, and now she has found her work at Square, in the San Francisco-based payment processor with a market value of almost $22 billion. She's the second major finance executive to leave Activision following the departure of Spencer Newman. The company planned to fire this week before he landed at Netflix as CFO on Wednesday. Newman had a provision in his contract that barred him from seeking other employment until his final months. This departure comes at a bad time for Activision, the producer of video games such as Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. The company has reported disappointing results for some key titles and annoyed fans with other moves. The two executives are leaving this week, added to a list of exits that included the heads of the company's two biggest divisions. Analysts say that Activision's slate of new games this year is weak, with no major new titles from Blizzard and tough comparisons to outsell last year's Call of Duty. 2019 is shaping up to be a very light year, Matthew Canterman, a Bloomberg intelligence analyst. The Santa Monica, California-based company said its third quarter conference call that it was seeing lower revenue from two games, both Overwatch and Hearthstone. Activision caused a fan revolt at its annual BlizzCon event in October when it showed off a disappointing preview of a mobile version of its Diablo game. Now, I'm going to make a semi-bold prediction here, and I'm certainly likely to be wrong, but it seems to me that consumer interest and the waning interest in IRL-type conventions might actually put BlizzCon at risk. They probably make some amount of money by hosting BlizzCon, but when you have a disastrous launch like Diablo Immortal at this year's BlizzCon, causing a record fan backlash that lasted weeks in generating millions and millions of views and page views in negative PR, Activision and Blizzard may be reconsidering putting on BlizzCon anymore. Just a thought. Just before the event, Mike Morhaime, co-founder of Activision's Blizzard division, said he was stepping down after 27 years. That followed the earlier departure of Eric Hirschberg, who ran the company's Activision publishing label. Now, it's not like these people are unemployed. They're finding gigantic salaries at other companies, but it's also the people that have the closest and most in-depth look at what the state of the financials of this company are and what the next 3 to 5 years look like. I would say if you have chief financial officers leaving, high upper level employees abandoning ship, this is a terrible sign for Blizzard and Activision. Now, it's probably some level of self-preservation because, as we saw with the previous CFO who left, his salary was close to $20 million. So when you're consolidating companies like Activision and Blizzard certainly are with cost-cutting efforts, there's a bit of self-preservation there, I would assume. But Chief Executive Officer Bobby Kotick has tried to diversify the company's revenue sources by adding executive from sports TV consumer products in the film industry. Newman had been recruited from the Walt Disney Company, where he was previously the CEO of the theme park division, and he lasted less than a year at Blizzard. Aya Ahuya was the company's investor relations chief before being named to her finance role at Blizzard under Newman. So both Newman and his probably chief reporting, the person that reported to him, also left. Activision shares were little changed after hours. They're down 46% from their October high. If the lineup gets fixed by 2020, it'll be okay, said Michael Patcher, a Wedbush securities analyst who recommends buying the stock. They have a gap, but they'll be fine. 2019, the state of Activision Blizzard is not strong. Activision Blizzard is starting off the year on the back foot with two high-profile departures of executives. The first, Activision CFO Spencer Newman, is getting fired, presumably because he went job hunting. I was right about that, by the way, then. It wasn't exactly crack detective work, but I did predict that that's why he was fired. It looks like that was true. And yesterday, it was revealed that Blizzard CFO is also leaving to take a job at Square, she was reportedly responsible for recent cost-cutting efforts at Blizzard. Activision stock is trading at barely half it was just a few months ago, and while they've obviously been general market downturns, there hasn't been a lot of good news in terms of player growth. The only consistent bright spot being Call of Duty will probably be best-selling game of the year again. There's concern about 2019, and I have to say, from the current state of Activision Blizzard, I feel it's warranted. Why? Because when you break down the state of the company's major franchises, you can see the picture being painted of slow decline rather than growth, unless some major moves are made. Call of Duty, yes, Candy Crush. Everyone probably forgot that Activision bought Candy Crush. I did. Maker King several years ago. Candy Crush is no longer terribly relevant in many gaming conversations, even mobile ones. Though it's a series that continues to have consistent user base and essentially print-free money while dramatically inflating Activision's active player counts, the easy money aspect of Candy Crush seems to have baited Activision into going full steam ahead into mobile for Blizzard titles especially, which is already alienating that fan base before any games had been released. Switching Blizzard's lineup, Heroes of the Storm has been one of the first casualties of the new cost-cutting push, with esports scene being effectively dismantled. Starcraft. Once upon a time, Starcraft might have been Blizzard's flagship series, but it never expanded past its RTS real-time strategy roots. A type of game that has fallen far out of favor both with players who have moved on to other games and the publisher itself. I'd say that's bullshit. I think there's market for a good RTS out there. It's just that there aren't that many great ones. Who could ever find a way to post-release monetize? They wanted to. See, that's right. They gave up on StarCraft because they couldn't make money after it was already released. StarCraft seemed like a universe that could have easily grown past its singular genre. World of Warcraft will likely remain an eternal Blizzard fixture with a core group of players forever paying monthly to log on. But debuting in 2004, WoW is now ancient, a relic of another era. A few large-scale MMOs even exist anymore. A relic of another era. There are new expansions as ever, but WoW will never be what it once was for Blizzard. There are rumors that Warcraft brand may be returning to an actual Warcraft 4, but if that's an RTS, that will be a strange market entry in the current climate, even if old school fans are excited by it. Hearthstone. Despite many competitors, Hearthstone has ruled the CCG roost for a long time now. The recent competition from Magic the Gathering itself as the game has an unsteadier footing than ever. Hearthstone has lost Ben Brody, the face of the game, who will now be working for Marvel in his new studio, and recent expansions have felt rushed and unbalanced. Hearthstone is also a game that feels incredibly costly to keep up with, given all the new releases, and someone who spent probably $1,500 on packs over 2 to 3 years on a game to get 90% of the cards with the new expansion, I had to give up eventually. I will say that I, as somebody who played Magic the Gathering, never felt Hearthstone was expensive because I liked that you could dust cards and get the cards you needed, but it's a fair point in today's economy. Diablo is one of Blizzard's worst moments of the year, developer hyping up a big Diablo announcement at BlizzCon only to reveal Diablo Immortal. A mobile game that seems to be mainly developed to please a mobile-obsessed Chinese audience. We know that Diablo 4 is coming only through reporting that says it is, not Blizzard's itself. But Diablo team was largely scattered after D3, and Blizzard had lost key people who were responsible for the game's grand post-launch turnaround, namely Josh Masakiria, who left the company. Diablo 4 is one of the only new games out that we even know Blizzard is making, and it's likely still several years away at this point. Overwatch, Blizzard's current flagship game, a brilliant IP that is winning Game of the Year awards 2 years ago. But Overwatch is so thoroughly dominated by a new hero shooter genre, it's essentially killed all the competition, and the rest of the world moved on to chase the Battle Royale trend. These days, Overwatch may be performing okay, but its community has grown exceptionally toxic, to the point where it can be exhausting to play. The same goes for its pro scene. Destiny, of all Activision series, one of the few that have directly called out for underperformance is Bungie's Destiny, which is kind of rich because the series is in the best place it's ever been. Even though I'm a hardcore Destiny fanboy, I recognize one of the core problems of the series that it can be very, very easy for players to fall behind, or at least feel like they've fallen behind after DLC releases. Missing the full Battle Royale game update. Blizzard got back to me and only addressed Amarita's departure, not Spencer Newman's. She's leaving Blizzard Entertainment. She resigned from the company. These departures are not related. I disagree. Blizzard's success has never been attributed to any single individual or groups. Everything we do here is highly collaborative, blah, 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 blah. Well, I would argue that Mr. Morhaime was an individual and extraordinarily important to the story of Blizzard franchises, World of Warcraft franchise and others. But I guess, what do I know? I don't run a multi-million, $100 million, billion-dollar corporation. I just buy the stuff. But I will say that there's a lot to be said for the market stagnation that Blizzard is currently suffering. The fact that they have a giant ship in a small harbor, meaning new competition is popping up every day, and they're such a big company that they can't react to it very quickly. They missed the boat on Battle Royale. People are getting bored with Hearthstone, Overwatch, World of Warcraft. The latest World of Warcraft had been a disaster for the player base and probably made more players quit than any other expansion in history. Blizzard and Activision are in big trouble, and people at the top jumping off the sinking ship should only further strengthen that. It'll be interesting to see what they do in 2020 or in 2019. I doubt it will be much, so they're going to have some pretty huge announcements if they have it, this year's BlizzCon to hold people over to 2020 when they might actually be able to release something new. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.